The outpost stood alone at the edge of a quiet star system, far from busy trade routes and far from any large colony. Most days were calm there. The staff were used to simple medical cases, minor injuries, routine checkups, and the occasional visitor from passing ships. Nothing ever prepared them for the sight that arrived one quiet morning. The ground started to shake as something huge moved outside the main landing zone. At first, the staff thought it was an earthquake, a type that came from natural movement under the soil. But the tremors were too steady and too rhythmic, like footsteps from a giant creature. When they checked the outer cameras, everyone froze. A massive alien dragon, larger than any creature the outpost had ever seen, slowly walked toward the main dome. Its scales shimmered under the pale sunlight, reflecting colors that shifted between silver and deep blue. It was beautiful in a strange way, but also frightening, because the creature's breathing looked heavy and strained. With every exhale, thin clouds of warm air escaped its mouth, showing that something was clearly wrong. The staff had heard stories about this species. Everyone had. These dragons were known not only for their size, but for their unpredictable temperament. Most creatures in the galaxy preferred to stay far away from them. They lived in remote worlds, and their rare appearance near civilization usually meant trouble or danger. But this one had come looking for help. The station alarms went off automatically as the dragon approached. The doors sealed themselves, and warning lights flashed everywhere inside the outpost. Some workers rushed to secure equipment, while others gathered near the observation windows, uneasy but curious. Nobody could understand why such a powerful creature would come here. The outpost was not a military base. It was not a research center built for large animals. It was just a small medical hub, meant for travelers and traders. The dragon slowed its steps and finally collapsed near the landing area, lying on its side with a heavy thud that echoed through the walls. Dust rose around it. The staff watching from inside felt the impact through the floor. One of the alien doctors let out a worried breath. They all knew that for a creature that strong to collapse, the problem must be serious. The commander of the station called everyone to attention over the intercom. He spoke calmly, even though his voice carried tension. He told the staff that the creature was injured and needed help, and the outpost's duty was to try. Even though many were afraid, none could argue. Medical workers across the stars followed the same simple rule. If someone needed help, you tried to give it. A team of medics prepared to go outside. They wore protective suits designed for harsh environments. They carried scanners, tools, and emergency kits. The outpost doors opened slowly, making a low hum as the airtight locks released. The team stepped out carefully, staying close together as they approached the giant creature. Up close, the dragon looked even larger than it did on the screens. Its scales were thick and layered like armor plates, and light ran across them in waves. The creature lifted its head slightly as the medics approached, and its eyes opened just enough to reveal a dim glow. The medics moved slower after that. They knew one wrong movement could provoke a reaction. One medic tried to scan the dragon from a distance. The device emitted a soft sound and a thin beam of light that moved across the creature's side. But the dragon did not like it. It growled softly, not loud enough to frighten them away, but clear enough to show discomfort. The medic stepped back at once. Another doctor tried speaking gently, hoping the creature might sense calmness in the tone. That didn't work either. The dragon turned its head slightly and gave a warning rumble. Inside the outpost, several staff members watched the live feed. None of them liked what they saw. The dragon was not attacking, but it wasn't letting anyone get close. Something was hurting it, but the medics had no way to find out what. The team tried again, this time with slow movements, and by keeping their distance. One medic extended a long device that allowed a scan from much farther away. They activated it carefully, hoping the dragon would accept it. But once again, the creature reacted. Its wings twitched sharply, sending dust into the air. The doctors quickly backed away, afraid the dragon might panic. The commander ordered the team to retreat for safety. The doors closed behind them once they were inside. Everyone gathered around the main screen, looking at the still image of the dragon lying outside, breathing unevenly. It was clear the creature needed help. But how could they treat something that refused to let anyone near it? Some staff suggested sending for specialists. Others thought they should wait and see if the creature calmed down on its own. A few people believed they should not interfere at all. They were worried that even a simple mistake could provoke the dragon into a defensive reaction, and the outpost was not built to handle such force. Hours passed as the creature lay outside, barely moving except for slow, heavy breaths. The sky shifted colors as the day moved on. Every now and then, the dragon would let out a low sound, not loud, but filled with frustration and discomfort. The staff inside could sense its pain even without getting close. The outpost's medical scanners picked up faint readings from outside, enough to confirm the dragon was injured internally. But the data was incomplete, and no diagnosis could be made without a direct examination. The alien doctors talked quietly among themselves, trying to guess what might be wrong. They had experience with dozens of species, maybe hundreds, but this creature was different. Its biology was far more complex. Treating it would require someone extremely skilled or extremely brave. One of the senior doctors suggested attempting anesthesia from a distance, using a harmless calming agent released in the air. The others agreed to test it. They prepared the device and opened the outer vents. A soft mist spread across the landing zone, drifting slowly toward the dragon. The creature noticed it instantly. It lifted its head, sniffed the air, and let out a deep, warning growl. The mist had barely touched its skin when the dragon shook it off and gave a sharp, irritated snort. The doctor shut down the system at once. They didn't want to risk causing more distress. As night approached, a cold quiet fell across the outpost. The dragon still refused every attempt at help. Some staff members wondered aloud why it had come here at all. Why choose a small, simple medical station instead of a proper facility? Maybe it was desperate. Maybe it had no choice. Or maybe it sensed something here the staff themselves couldn't understand yet. Inside, the team gathered one last time to discuss what to do. The commander reminded them that the creature had shown restraint. It never attacked, never tried to destroy the outpost, even though it easily could. That meant it didn't want to hurt anyone. It simply couldn't trust them yet. The problem was that time was running out. The dragon's breathing had become slower, and its eyes stayed closed more often. It was losing strength. Every moment without treatment pushed it closer to danger. But no one knew how to reach it. The staff sat in silence for a while, listening to the quiet hum of the station. The situation felt heavier with each passing minute. They had the skills to help, but no way to use them. It was a rare feeling for trained medics to stand so close to someone who needed help and be completely unable to give it. As the night deepened, the lights of the outpost glowed softly in the darkness. The dragon lay under the stars, silent and still, while the staff hoped for a miracle or a new idea. Nobody knew that the answer would arrive soon, in a way none of them expected, carried by someone who looked far too sick to stand and far too fragile to face such a creature. But for now, all they could do was wait, watching over a giant creature that feared them too much to let them save its life. The next morning arrived slowly, and the outpost felt strangely heavy. Nobody slept well. Every person who closed their eyes kept thinking about the massive creature lying just outside their walls. The dragon had not moved much during the night. Its slow breathing could still be heard through the ground, gently shaking the floor from time to time. Even those who pretended not to be worried ended up glancing at the outer screens every few minutes, The staff gathered in the main room shortly after sunrise. The sky outside was a soft shade of purple, and the air looked cold, almost frozen. The dragon's body gave off a faint warmth that made a light mist rise around it. It looked peaceful from far away, but everyone knew the truth. The creature was not resting because it wanted to. It was resting because it had no strength left to do anything else. The commander stood in front of the group, holding a small pad with updated readings from the scanners. He didn't look confident. His expression showed the kind of worry that comes when someone has run out of ideas. He explained that the dragon's condition had become worse. The internal readings were fading, and even though the scans were unclear, they showed enough to confirm that the creature needed urgent help. Nobody questioned that. The problem was still the same. They could not get close to it. One of the younger medics suggested trying again, this time with softer lights and slower movements. Another proposed building a temporary barrier between the medics and the dragon, something transparent that the creature might not find threatening. But the older doctors shook their heads. They knew the attempts would likely fail. Yesterday had shown them clearly that the dragon reacted to anything unfamiliar. Few staff members whispered amongst themselves. Some wondered if they should send a message to nearby planets again, though they had already done that the previous night. The problem was that nobody wanted to risk answering a call involving such a dangerous creature. The stories about these dragons were famous across many systems. They were known as powerful, unpredictable, and extremely difficult to treat medically. Only a few experts in the galaxy had any real experience working with them, and most of those experts were many light years away. The commander told the group that he had sent out a new distress request, one marked as urgent. But he also knew that even if someone responded, it might take days or weeks for help to arrive. The dragon did not have that kind of time. The team split up to check their equipment, organize supplies, and prepare for any possibility. Some medics walked around the room quietly, adjusting scanners and refilling portable devices. Others talked in low voices, trying to understand why the dragon had come here in the first place. It felt strange that a creature with such intelligence and power would choose this small outpost instead of a more advanced station. Outside, the dragon let out a low sound. It was not loud or frightening, but it carried deep sadness and discomfort. The noise traveled through the metal walls, making everyone stop what they were doing for a moment. Even though the creature was huge and strong, that sound reminded the staff that it was still alive, still conscious, and still suffering. Around midday, a soft alarm chimed, signaling that the scanners had detected a new change. The dragon's temperature had dropped slightly, something that worried the doctors. They gathered around the screen again. The readings showed that the creature was using its remaining energy to keep itself stable, but it was slowly losing the fight. The commander asked if anyone had new ideas, even unusual ones. The room stayed quiet for several seconds. Then one of the alien medics raised a hand. He suggested using a special translation device, one that detected emotional waves instead of spoken language. It was originally designed for species that communicated through changes in body heat or subtle vibrations. Maybe, he said, it could help the team understand what the dragon was feeling. Not actual words, but a sense of its emotional state. The staff agreed it was worth trying. They set up the device near the thick observation window that faced the dragon. The device hummed softly as it activated. A small line of colored lights began to move, changing their patterns based on the dragon's emotional signals. The readings started very unstable at first. The dragon was tense, restless, and full of discomfort. But after a few minutes, the device shifted into a calmer rhythm. The lights settled into patterns that suggested confusion mixed with fear. The doctors exchanged looks. They had expected anger. They had expected aggression or rage. But the device showed something unexpected. The dragon was afraid. That changed everything. Suddenly, the problem made more sense. The creature wasn't rejecting treatment because it wanted to fight. It was rejecting treatment because it didn't trust anyone. It didn't understand the scanners. It didn't understand the medical tools. Every attempt to approach it felt threatening to the creature, and fear made it react sharply. One of the older doctors sighed as he looked at the data. He explained that fear could make any creature unpredictable, no matter how strong or intelligent. Even the most powerful beings could react badly when frightened. The real challenge wasn't the dragon's strength. It was the dragon's fear. This realization brought a new direction, but not an easy one. Now the question wasn't how to treat the dragon's injury. The question was how to calm the creature enough to let them help. The staff tried a new approach. They recorded gentle soft tones used in calming therapy for stressed patients. They played these sounds through outdoor speakers at a very low volume. The dragon's ear fins twitched faintly at the sound. It didn't react aggressively, which was a small victory. But it also didn't relax much. They tried shifting the lights outside to warmer colors, hoping that a softer environment would ease the creature's tension. The change helped a little, but not enough to make a difference. The dragon remained alert, even though its eyes remained mostly closed. By late afternoon, everyone felt the pressure of time. The creature's strength was fading more quickly than expected. The medics gathered again, tired but determined to keep thinking. They reviewed every tool they had, every method they knew, every idea that might help. But no solution seemed strong enough to break through the wall of fear the dragon had built around itself. Some of the staff started to wonder if they were witnessing the final hours of a creature that had traveled who knows how far in search of help. The thought was painful. They were not used to feeling helpless. Their entire job was built on the belief that every being who asked for help deserved a chance to survive. As the second evening arrived, the outpost grew quiet again. The sky outside turned a deep shade of orange, fading slowly into dark blue. A dragon lay still, its breathing deeper and more uneven than before. The temperature readings dropped again. The chance of survival grew thinner by the minute. Inside, the medics continued to work late, refusing to give up. Some sat in corners, thinking silently. Others paced around the room. A few stared at the screens with tired eyes. Nobody wanted to say the words they were all thinking, that there might be nothing more they could do. The atmosphere felt heavy, but also hopeful in a strange way. Something told them the story wasn't over yet. The dragon had reached them somehow, guided by instinct or intelligence. It had chosen this place for a reason, even if they didn't understand what that reason was. Late into the night, while the outpost lights glowed quietly, a signal appeared on the communication screen, a small notification blinking softly. Someone had responded to the distress call, but the message wasn't long. It wasn't from a team of experts or a large medical ship. It was from a single person who typed only a few short words. The message simply said they were on their way and would arrive soon. Most of the staff assumed it was a mistake. They expected a team, not one person. And the message didn't include details, no rank, no profession, no explanation. Just a promise to come. The commander frowned at the screen. He didn't know whether to feel relieved or concerned. But at that moment, even a small chance felt like something to hold on to. Nobody knew yet that the one who had responded wasn't just any medic. And nobody knew the person was already sick, barely strong enough to stand. They had no idea that someone so fragile would try to face the giant creature outside. But that strange, unexpected help was already on the way, moving through space toward the outpost, ready to change everything. The outpost stayed quiet through most of the night, as everyone waited for the unknown visitor who had replied to their distress call. No one expected a single person to come. especially not to help with something as complicated and dangerous as a giant alien dragon. Still, the message was clear. Someone was coming. And for the staff, that tiny bit of hope was better than nothing. A little before sunrise, the outer sensors picked up movement in the sky. A small ship, much smaller than any medical craft, the staff were used to approach the landing zone. It didn't look advanced. In fact, it looked old, as if it had been repaired dozens of times. The paint was faded. The engines flickered unevenly. The design was simple and very familiar. It was a human ship. The outpost members exchanged surprised looks. Most of them had expected an alien specialist from some advanced world, not a human, and certainly not one traveling alone in a small ship that looked like it barely held together. Still, they didn't question it too much. They simply gathered near the entrance as the ship landed with a gentle shake. When the doors of the small craft opened, a figure stepped out slowly. It was clear from the first moment that this person wasn't in good shape. Their steps were unsteady, and they paused often, as if trying to catch their breath. They wore a simple medical jacket and carried a small case that seemed far too small for the situation. No one could understand how someone in such weak condition could hope to help a creature as large and powerful as the dragon outside. The commander went forward to greet the human. He tried to speak gently, not wanting to create extra stress. The human lifted their head and gave a tired smile. Even from a distance, it was clear the human looked sick. Their eyes were a little dull. Their skin looked pale. Their voice, when they spoke, sounded soft and worn. The staff exchanged nervous glances. They weren't sure if this person could even walk around the station, let alone treat a giant creature lying outside, but the human moved forward with slow determination. They asked for a quick update and listened carefully as the medics explained the dragon's condition, its behavior, and how it had refused every attempt of treatment. The human didn't react with fear or hesitation. Instead, they nodded as if everything made complete sense. After hearing the details, the human asked only one simple question. "Where is the dragon?" The staff hesitated, reminding the visitor that the creature was extremely large, frightened, and unpredictable. They warned the human that even getting close was risky. The human still nodded calmly. They seemed too tired to show fear, yet too focused to back away. Finally, the commander agreed to let the human observe the dragon from inside the safety of the outpost first. They guided the human to the observation window. The dragon lay on the ground outside, its large form barely moving under the morning light. The faint mist from its warm breath drifted across the air. To the human, the creature didn't look terrifying. It looked exhausted. The human pressed a hand lightly against the glass, studying the creature with quiet attention. The staff waited for them to speak, but the human stayed silent for nearly a full minute, as if trying to understand something the others didn't see. Finally, the human turned to the group and said something that surprised everyone. "The dragon isn't angry. It's scared." The alien doctors exchanged looks. They had suspected fear, but couldn't confirm it. Hearing the same conclusion from someone who had just arrived made them reconsider their own doubts. They realized the human wasn't judging the situation through data alone. They were reading the creature emotionally. The commander asked gently if the human felt well enough to continue working. The human gave a small laugh, though it sounded tired. They admitted they were recovering from an illness and still felt weak, but insisted they could help. Some staff members wanted to argue, but the look in the human's eyes stopped them. Even with exhaustion showing across their face, there was something steady and compassionate in their expression. The human asked for a few minutes to prepare. They sat on a small bench and opened their case. Instead of advanced tools or powerful equipment, the case held only simple devices, basic scanners, soft cloths, a few calm-toned lights, and a small device used to emit gentle audio waves. It wasn't much, But the human handled each tool with care, as if every item mattered. The staff watched quietly. They had seen many experts from different species over the years, but this human didn't look like an expert. They looked like someone who had spent their life treating ordinary beings, not giant creatures from distant worlds. Yet there was something in their calmness that made the staff hopeful despite their doubts. When the human finished preparing, they looked at the dragon outside again. They asked if they could step out alone. The commander refused immediately, pointing out that it was far too dangerous. The staff insisted this couldn't be allowed. But the human didn't argue. They only explained that the dragon had rejected all attempts from groups of medics. It had reacted every time someone approached with tools or unfamiliar equipment. If the human went alone, slowly and without any bright devices, maybe the dragon wouldn't feel threatened. The outpost workers were torn. Letting a sick human go near a powerful creature felt irresponsible. But doing nothing would let the dragon suffer further. After a long moment of discussion, the commander agreed, but only under strict monitoring. The human accepted the conditions without hesitation. The outer doors opened slowly, letting the human step into the cold air of the landing zone. Everyone inside held their breath as the human took careful steps toward the dragon. The creature didn't react at first, perhaps too tired to notice. But after a few more steps, one of its ear fins twitched. Then an eye opened slightly, showing a faint glow. The human stopped immediately, raising both hands slowly to show they carried no threat. The dragon's eye followed the small movement. The human stood still for several seconds, letting the creature sense their presence. The outpost staff watched the screens closely. Every small action felt important. Every small reaction from the dragon made their hearts jump. The human took another step forward, slow and gentle. The dragon's breathing changed a little, but it didn't grow tense. Its gaze seemed to soften, though the exhaustion behind it was still obvious. The human began speaking in a soft voice, not words the dragon would understand, but a calming tone that carried warmth. The dragon's ear fins shifted slightly, as if listening. For the first time since arriving at the outpost, the dragon didn't show irritation or fear in response to someone approaching. It simply watched. One of the medics whispered inside, amazed that the human's presence alone seemed to change the creature's attitude. Another staff member said quietly that maybe the dragon recognized something familiar: weakness, pain, or gentle behavior. Whatever the reason, the change was real. The human moved close enough to kneel beside the dragon's front limb, keeping their movements steady. The creature exhaled slowly, making a warm cloud of mist rise. The human didn't flinch. Instead, they placed a hand near the creature's scales, not touching yet, just showing intention. When the dragon didn't pull away, the humans slowly let their hand rest gently on one of the scales. The reaction was unexpected. The dragon gave a soft rumble, not a warning, but something closer to relief. It closed its eyes halfway, not fully relaxed, but calmer than anyone had seen it before. Inside, the staff watched with quiet amazement. The one person they least expected to succeed, the sick, exhausted human medic, was the only one the dragon allowed near. The human continued to speak, softly while checking the scales, feeling for heat, pressure, or signs of injury. Their movements were light and patient. After a few moments, the human leaned closer, focusing on a particular area under the creature's shoulder. They paused, studying the surface carefully. The staff leaned in closer to their screens. Something had caught the human's attention. The human didn't say anything yet. They kept examining the area, as if confirming their suspicion. After another long moment, the human stood up slowly, looked toward the outpost window where the staff watched, and gestured that they needed tools, but simple ones. They had found something. Something the alien medics had missed. And for the first time since the dragon arrived at the outpost, hope finally felt real. The moment the human medics signaled toward the outpost window, everyone inside stood up. They could tell from the human's posture that something important had been discovered. The commander leaned closer to the screen, trying to understand the silent gesture. The human pointed gently toward the dragon's shoulder area and then held up 2 fingers, signaling they needed only a couple of basic tools. No advanced machines, no bright lights, no complicated devices, just simple instruments. The staff hurried to prepare what the human requested. Nothing more than a small scanner with a dim light, a set of soft paddings, and a tiny device used to read pressure under the skin. Items so ordinary that most medics carried them daily. But the human repeated the signal again through the camera, reminding them to bring only the essentials. Nobody understood yet why the human insisted on such simple tools. But they didn't question it. They trusted the instincts of the one person the dragon allowed near. When everything was ready, the outer doors opened once again. A small drone delivered the tools to the human slowly and quietly, avoiding sudden movements. The dragon's eyes lifted slightly as the drone approached, but it didn't react sharply. The human placed a calm hand on the creature's scales, reassuring it in a soft voice until the drone left. Inside the outpost, the entire staff watched in complete silence. Every step the human took felt like an important moment. They carefully examined the area under the dragon's front limb again, using only the dim light. The human's movements were gentle and steady, as if trying to avoid frightening a child. The dragon's breathing trembled slightly at first, but the human's calm voice seemed to help it settle again. After a few minutes, the human turned the small pressure-reading device on and placed it lightly against the dragon's scales. They moved it in slow circles, listening closely to the readings. Then the human stopped at one specific spot. Their expression changed, not in fear, but in recognition. The human looked toward the outpost window again and raised their hand in a small motion, signaling that they had confirmed something. The alien medics inside exchanged confused looks. They didn't understand what the human had found, but they could sense it was important. The human leaned closer to the dragon and spoke softly, almost as if talking to a frightened friend. They placed their hand flat against the scale again, letting the creature feel their presence. The dragon's ear fins twitched slightly. It was still weak, but it didn't pull away. Then, in a slow and careful voice, the human explained through their communicator what they had discovered. The dragon wasn't just injured. Something was stuck under one of its thick scales, something small, hard and deeply embedded, pressing against sensitive tissue. The human suspected it might be a tiny fragment from something the dragon encountered before reaching the outpost. Whatever it was, it caused severe internal discomfort, making the creature unable to breathe normally or move easily. It wasn't a major internal injury. It wasn't a failing organ. It was something much simpler, but lodged in a location that made normal scans ineffective. The alien medics had missed it because their scanners could not read through the dragon's unusually layered scales. But the human had used a different method: touch, pressure, and careful observation. The alien medics felt stunned. It seemed almost impossible that such a small issue could cause so much distress for a creature so large. But the human insisted that this species was extremely sensitive under certain scales, especially near the front limb. The pressure of even a tiny object could cause pain throughout the entire body. The challenge now was removing the object without frightening the dragon or making it react violently out of instinct. The human stood up slowly and took a deep breath. Despite their obvious exhaustion, they remained calm. They requested 2 more things from the outpost: a pair of soft grips and a warm compress that carried no strong smell. Nothing advanced, nothing large, just items that wouldn't trigger fear. The commander hesitated. He asked the human if they were physically strong enough to continue. The human smiled faintly, though it was the tired kind of smile, even by someone pushing themselves beyond their limits. They admitted they didn't feel strong, but insisted the dragon didn't need strength from them. It needed gentleness. The commander agreed. Though worry painted his expression, a small drone brought the requested items outside. The human took them carefully and placed the warm compress near the area first, letting the heat soften the scales. They spoke softly again, telling the dragon it would feel a small discomfort, but not danger. The creature made a low sound, not a growl, just a tired acknowledgement, as if trusting the human's intentions. Inside the outpost, everyone leaned closer to the screens. Some medics held their breath without realizing it. The human used the soft grips to gently lift the scale, just enough to reveal the faint glimmer of something metallic buried underneath. It was tiny, hardly bigger than a pebble, but sharp enough to cause deep pressure. The dragon tensed slightly. The ground rumbled faintly under its weight. The human paused immediately, placing their hand on the dragon's side again. They whispered calming tones, letting the creature feel steady breathing and steady presence. After a few moments, the dragon relaxed again, though its breathing stayed shaky. Then, slowly and carefully, the human slid the grips under the object and lifted it out. It was stuck deep, and even the small motion made the dragon pull in a rough breath. But the human kept their movements gentle and steady, avoiding anything sudden. Finally, the tiny fragment slipped free. The human held it up for the camera to see. The metal glimmered under the dim light. It looked like a broken piece of machinery or debris, maybe from something the dragon collided with during travel. The alien doctors murmured among themselves, realizing how such a small shard caused so much suffering. As soon as the object was removed, the dragon exhaled deeply, a long, trembling breath that sounded like relief. The creature's muscles eased. Its tail, which had remained stiff throughout the night, loosened slightly on the ground. The dragon opened its eyes fully for the first time since it arrived. The glow inside them was faint, but clearer than before. The human gently pressed the warm compress against the area once more, helping the skin settle. They then stepped back, giving the dragon space. The creature slowly moved its front limb, testing the area with careful motions. It looked surprised, if a dragon could feel surprise at the sudden ease in its movement. The human watched with a small smile. They swayed slightly on their feet, exhausted from effort and illness, but still steady enough to stay near the dragon. Inside the outpost, the staff let out relieved breaths. They had not realized how tense they had been until that moment. Some laughed softly out of pure relief. Others stared at the screen with wide eyes, still amazed at what they had witnessed. The commander sent a message to the human through the communicator, asking if they needed assistance returning inside. The human nodded and began walking slowly toward the outpost doors, one hand resting lightly against the dragon's scale in a final reassuring gesture. And at that moment, something unexpected happened. The dragon lifted its head slightly and let out a soft, low sound. Not a warning, not a growl. It was something closer to gratitude. The creature blinked slowly at the human, its eyes warm with a feeling the staff had never seen in such a species before. The human paused and smiled back, touching the creature's scale gently before turning toward the outpost again, as the doors closed behind them. The staff rushed forward to help the human sit down. They looked extremely tired, breathing heavily but calm. The alien medics checked their condition, worried the effort might have pushed the human too far. But the human simply waved a hand weakly and said they were fine. They just needed rest. The commander looked at the screen, showing the dragon outside. The creature had already shifted its position, lying more comfortably now. Its breathing looked smoother and more even. The difference was clear. The giant dragon had come to them seeking help, and the one who saved it was the weakest-looking person in the entire station. It was a reminder that strength didn't always come from power. Sometimes strength came from patience, from kindness, from the willingness to step forward when everyone else stepped back. But the story wasn't over yet. The dragon was relieved, yes, but it wasn't ready to leave. It still watched the outpost quietly, as if waiting for something more. And deep inside, none of them knew that this moment was only the beginning of what would come next. After the human medic returned inside, the atmosphere in the outpost changed. The air felt lighter, calmer, as if a long, heavy weight had been lifted. The giant dragon remained outside, lying on the landing zone, but there was a difference. Its breathing was smooth now. Its large eyes, once wary and tense, looked soft and almost reflective. The staff gathered near the observation windows, watching the creature with amazement. They had never seen anything like it. Every medic, every worker in the outpost felt a mix of relief, awe, and curiosity. The commander called for a short meeting, not to discuss treatment, because the human had already done what the alien experts could not, but to consider what would happen next. The dragon had recovered enough to move, but it was still huge, still powerful, and still unfamiliar with humans or aliens alike. Nobody knew if it would leave peacefully, or if it might stay near the outpost indefinitely. The human medic, sitting quietly on a bench, offered a simple suggestion. "We need to give it space," they said softly, their voice calm but tired. "It is still learning to trust us. If we push too much, it might retreat or even panic." The staff nodded, realizing that this was not about medicine anymore. It was about patience, understanding, and respect. Outside, the dragon shifted slightly, raising its head to look toward the observation windows. It did not roar or growl. Instead, it simply observed. Its gaze lingered on the human who had helped it, and the staff noticed a faint warmth in its expression, a recognition that seemed almost intelligent. For hours, it stayed like that, motionless but aware. The human medic slowly stood up, still weak from illness, but determined, and walked back to the large window. They raised a hand gently in greeting. The dragon's massive eyes followed the gesture. Then, almost carefully, it moved a little closer to the outpost. Every step it took was measured, deliberate, and non-threatening. The staff watched with bated breath. No one dared to make sudden moves. As the hours passed, the dragon began exploring the area around the outpost. It moved with caution, touching the ground softly with its large claws and sniffing the air. The human medic stayed near the observation area, sometimes stepping outside a few meters at a time, always calm, always showing patience. The creature seemed to understand that the human meant no harm. In fact, it seemed almost grateful, as if it recognized the effort and care it had been shown. That night, the outpost staff noticed something unexpected. The dragon rested its head near the human medic, not in aggression, but in a silent gesture of trust. It was subtle, a tilt of the massive head, a soft exhale, but it carried a clear message. For the first time, the staff realized that the dragon had formed a bond. It wasn't just survival anymore. It was a connection born of understanding and empathy. The human medic, despite their fatigue and lingering illness, sat quietly beside the dragon, gently laying a hand on its scale. They spoke softly, almost in whispers, sharing calm words that the dragon might not understand in language, but could understand in tone. The staff inside the outpost watched, amazed. They had never seen a creature so huge, so powerful, respond so gently to someone so small and fragile. It was a lesson in strength, patience, and the power of compassion. The next morning, the outpost began preparations for the dragon's potential departure. The human medic suggested leaving food near the landing zone, something safe and nourishing that the creature could recognize. The staff gathered supplies and placed them carefully, keeping a safe distance. The dragon approached slowly, sniffing the food, then stepped back to observe the human. It seemed to be making a decision, considering whether it could trust the station and its inhabitants completely. Over the next few days, the human medic continued to check on the dragon. They monitored its health carefully, but never forced interaction. The dragon began moving more confidently, exploring the landing zone and even the surrounding terrain. Sometimes it would return to the human, almost like it was checking in, and the human would acknowledge it with soft words and gentle gestures. The staff began to understand the importance of the human's approach. It was not tools or advanced medicine that mattered most. It was presence, patience, and understanding. During one quiet evening, as the stars began to appear in the sky, the dragon did something extraordinary. It stretched its massive wings slowly, carefully, without frightening anyone. Then it lowered itself back to the ground, bringing one wing to rest near the human medic. It was as if the dragon wanted to share its space, to include the human in its world, without aggression or fear. The staff inside the outpost felt awe. They realized they were witnessing a bond between species that few had ever seen. Something rare and extraordinary. The human medic finally allowed themselves a moment to rest, sitting near the dragon while it remained still beside them. They spoke softly about small things, simple words that carried comfort, not instructions or commands. The dragon seemed to listen, occasionally shifting closer, letting its warmth touch the medic's hands. For the first time since its arrival, the creature looked entirely calm, free of pain and free of fear. As the days passed, the dragon began showing behaviors that surprised the staff. It started to explore further away from the outpost, but always returned. It allowed other staff members to watch, sometimes even to approach at a distance, though it always stayed closest to the human. The outpost's alien medics began learning from the human's methods, how gentleness, patience, and understanding could achieve what advanced tools could not. Eventually, the dragon moved to a small hill overlooking the outpost. It raised its head and gazed at the stars above. The human medic followed slowly, allowing the creature space. The staff watched quietly, sensing a significant moment. The dragon seemed to be making a decision. After days of struggle, it was considering leaving, but it did so calmly, without fear or aggression. The human medic spoke softly to it, words gentle and reassuring. The dragon lowered its head once more, allowing the human to touch its scales briefly. Then it stood fully, stretched its wings slowly, and gave a single, soft rumble, a sound of acknowledgement, gratitude, and trust. It turned and walked toward the open space beyond the landing zone, moving carefully. The staff held their breath, watching its departure. Before leaving completely, the dragon paused and looked back. Its eyes met the human medic's, and there was a clear sense of understanding. Not words, not language, but a silent message. "Thank you." The human nodded, a faint smile on their face, and the dragon finally spread its wings and flew away into the night sky. The outpost remained quiet for a long moment after the dragon left. Everyone felt a mixture of relief, pride, and amazement. They had witnessed something extraordinary, not just the healing of a creature, but the formation of trust between beings from entirely different worlds. The human medic, despite their illness, had shown what patience, care, and courage could achieve. Later, the commander gathered the staff. He reminded them that the story was not just about medicine or strength. It was about empathy, understanding, and courage, the kind that comes from stepping forward even when the odds seem impossible. The staff listened quietly, realizing that they had learned something more important than any medical technique. They had learned that connection could transcend fear, size, and even species. The human medic rested that night, finally allowing themselves to sleep. They had pushed their body to the limit, faced their own weakness, and still cared for another, being above all else. The outpost staff continued to talk quietly among themselves. replaying the moments they had witnessed, and marveling at the bond that had formed between human and dragon. Over the following days, the outpost returned to normal routines, but the story of the dragon and the human medic became legendary. Visitors who passed through the outpost were told about the arrival of a giant, terrifying creature that refused help from anyone until a single, sick human medic arrived and earned its trust. The lessons of patience, courage, and empathy spread quickly, inspiring many who heard the tale. The dragon was never seen again, but its presence lingered in the minds of everyone at the outpost. Sometimes, during quiet nights, the staff would look toward the horizon, imagining the creature flying freely among the stars, thinking back on the kindness shown to it. And somewhere in that vast universe, the dragon remembered the human who had risked so much, who had shown strength not through power, but through care. The human medic recovered slowly, but the experience left a lasting impact on them as well. They realized that bravery is not only about physical strength, but about the willingness to approach fear and uncertainty with compassion. They also understood that even the smallest gestures, a soft word, a gentle touch, patience in the face of danger, can change the outcome of situations that seem impossible. The outpost, though quiet again, carried the memory of that extraordinary event in its walls. Every new staff member was told the story, not as a legend of danger, but as a lesson in understanding. The human medic's actions had created a ripple, teaching all who witnessed it that empathy can bridge the gap between worlds, and that even the most terrifying challenges can be faced with patience, courage, and heart. And so, in that remote outpost, far from busy trade routes and crowded planets, the memory of the dragon and the human medic lived on. It was a story of fear,